The first chill of unease ran down my spine 3 days before the email. On Thursday, at the leadership meeting, Jonathan Sterling's chair, the senior finance director of Bulldog, stood empty. The same guy who dismissively called interns human bandwidth. He, punctual to a fault, always arrived 15 minutes early, with his signature red pen and a hellish concoction of rage and cucumber water instead of breakfast. And then, poof, gone. Not a word, no explanation, not even a note on his calendar. Something was definitely fishy. Then, weird things started happening in Slack. The obscure hashtag vanished. Just dissolved into the digital ether. HR brushed it off as a permissions glitch, but I checked the server logs. Someone nuked the entire workspace at 3:47 a.m. Who's even online at that hour? Only someone covering their tracks. And the cherry on top was the Friday pizza party. Since COVID restrictions, we hadn't even hinted at these morale-boosting events. And suddenly, this appreciation day with greasy dominoes and lukewarm soda caught everyone off guard. They booked the room next to HR, decorated with balloons. Heck, they even hired a DJ. They were clearly overdoing it. Ashley, the VP of HR, whose desk was plastered with motivational TED Talk quotes, droned on for 5 minutes about a new approach to corporate culture. While she was talking, 3 colleagues, between slices of pizza, were frantically updating their resumes. I didn't think much of it then, but I should have. It wasn't a party, it was a carefully orchestrated distraction. On Monday, my security badge refused to work on the first try. On the second, a plaintive beep and a green light. I brushed it off, but a siren wailed inside me. My team's weekly report bounced back with a horrifying error: user does not exist. And our resource tracker simply disappeared, displaying a 4004 page with a taunting fox face and the message "oops." On Tuesday, at 7:08 a.m., it arrived, the email. Subject: Strategic Repositioning Update. The text was an ice-cold shower: your position has been impacted. Your role has been identified as redundant in the upcoming transformation cycle. We value your service. Effective immediately. No greeting, no signature, no shred of humanity. And the final nail in the coffin, the option to reply all. Yeah, right, that's exactly what I wanted, to thank them for turning 16 years of loyal service into a 4-line digital obituary. 2 years without a vacation. Once, during an actual tornado, I managed to calculate payroll, and during the Q4 audit, my home was the office, and my bed was the couch. And after all that, I was fired by some damn bot. But I wasn't about to tell some sad story about my beat-up old sob. I had an ace up my sleeve, something much better. 3 months ago, that missing Jonathan Sterling, our bulldog, mixed up the files and sent me a spreadsheet called FI25 Bonus Matrix Master Final XLSM instead of the cost model. Inside, on the tabs, were names, dollar amounts. My severance package looked like pocket lint lost on the floor of the cheapest dive bar in comparison. At the moment when my heart hammered like drywall cracking under immense pressure, I felt neither sadness nor fear. I was overwhelmed by a wave of readiness. They forgot that I trained half the people who built that damn permissions system. They thought the layoff would go smoothly, like a surgical operation, but I wouldn't go quietly. And I certainly wouldn't go empty-handed. Back when I didn't care about anything, they called me the ghost of past budgets. Quiet, fast, invisible. They'd regret waking that ghost in me. Every dollar in the company was an open book to me. I knew where it breathed, where it hurt, where it hid. And when Jonathan Sterling mistakenly sent me that spreadsheet, I didn't shout it from the rooftops. I didn't forward it to everyone. No, I hid it in plain sight, in a folder called Archive Backup FY22, disguised under 6 fake subfolders named after bogus projects. I knew, I sensed, that sooner or later, someone would mess up, hit the wrong button, and I wanted to be the first to see the circus. But I couldn't imagine how ineptly they would stage everything. You see, they didn't just kick me to the curb. They decimated my department. 57 people. Operations, strategy, logistics, vendor management, all gone, as if we never existed, as if we were someone's drunk and delusional idea. And even that they couldn't do humanely. One guy found out he was fired when his Slack avatar suddenly disappeared in the middle of a meeting. Another woman was leading a Zoom conference with a client when her Outlook calendar self-destructed live on screen. The meeting just vanished, as if it had been raptured. It wasn't just a staff optimization. It was a digital guillotine. And the spreadsheet, oh, that thing was glowing like Chernobyl. It had names in it. And not just the names of senior executives. The boardroom was filled with board members and some puffed-up external consultants. One guy, cryptically initialed RM, received a discretionary bonus of an astronomical $2.4 million. And in the note, like a punch to the gut, ensure continued silence. Cancun. What the hell happened in Cancun? But what infuriated me most was Ashley, the pizza queen. $175,000 for cultural navigation during the transition. All she did was feed us 2 slices of pepperoni and put on a Spotify playlist. That was her entire navigation. And the QA team, the ones who actually worked their tails off, didn't get a dime of severance. It wasn't just greed, it was virtuoso hypocrisy, honed to perfection. Corporate cynicism at its finest, smiling to your face, stabbing you in the gut, and juggling lies behind your back, all while sprinkling it with glittering pretense. At 9:42 a.m., after 23 minutes of furious pacing around the apartment, 2 energy drinks, and 1 very dubious hacking attempt, I found a loophole, an outdated all-employees U.S. corporation mailing list. They had long since moved all communication to internal channels, but someone forgot to close this old relic, and surprisingly, it still worked. I opened an old email, clicked reply all, and before common sense could prevail, I attached the file. I put just enough in the spreadsheet to pique their curiosity, no more. 5 names, 5 generous bonuses, 5 ridiculous justifications that sounded like a cruel mockery. And in conclusion, 6 words thrown in the face of the system: if we're redundant, what's this? No signature, no farewell, no slightest regret. Just clicked send. Then I got up, unplugged the keyboard cord, and walked to the window overlooking the parking lot. There, like ants, groups of employees were milling about, their faces in the dim light of their phone screens. Euphoria. Intrigue. Fear? The HR specialist, breathless, burst into the executive office, clutching a tablet as if it were loaded with explosives. And I couldn't help but smile. Because this file isn't just soulless numbers. It's a spark capable of igniting a flame. First, a ringing silence. And then, an explosion. The first ping in Slack came from someone in the purchasing department: is this real? Then, as if emerging from oblivion, a guy from the legal department, with whom I hadn't exchanged a word in the last 4 years, responded: this wasn't in the documents. Where did you get this? At 10:11 a.m., Ashley from HR jumped out of her office as if someone had lit her expensive ergonomic yoga chair on fire. Panic was mounting. She rushed past the humming copiers, past the interns desperately pretending they weren't interested in the scandalous correspondence. Her heels beat a frantic rhythm on the parquet floor, as if tapping out the word collapse in Morse code. At 10:27 a.m., they struck. The mailbox disappeared. The badge flashed red traitorously. Remote access blocked. But they were too overconfident. They didn't realize she had an ace up her sleeve. You can't dedicate 16 years to creating a system and not leave yourself a loophole. Especially when you're the author of half the internal IT instructions. She logged in through a test account created back in 2018 under the guise of Marty Calhoun. Marty Calhoun, according to the internal Atlassian database, was listed as a janitor currently vacationing somewhere on the beaches of Puerto Rico. And through Marty's eyes, she watched as the house of cards began to crumble. People weren't just reading the email, they were responding. A graphic designer attached a list of unpaid invoices for the past 3 months. And a project manager from the Munich office sent screenshots of cost-cutting measures, showing pictures of executives driving rented Lamborghinis during the climate summit in Dubai. Someone from marketing, may they be forever glorified, gave birth to a meme, the face of our CFO, crudely photoshopped onto Gollum, greedily hugging a mountain of gold. And it took off. With each passing minute, this viral nightmare grew exponentially. By noon, the ill-fated thread had been viewed 12,000 times. Worse, the subject of the email leaked outside the company. On LinkedIn, posts began to appear like mushrooms after the rain, in the spirit of, "I lost my job today, but I gained dignity." When management shows its true face, believe your eyes. The hashtag Cancun bonus started to gain momentum, becoming a local trend. And then, someone made a video on TikTok. God, there was a dance. A damn protest dance. But the final blow was that someone leaked the entire bonus spreadsheet. I swear, it wasn't me. However, it didn't need to be. When the fire was already burning, the dry grass did the rest. The file spread like mold in an abandoned house somewhere in Florida. Reddit picked it up like a hungry beast. Then Twitter. And there it was, one of the morning financial shows blaring it all under the headline, "Anonymous Employee Exposes $2 billion Tech Giant's Corporate Rot." And guess whose face they're showing? A blurred photo from a company party. Me, with a hot dog in hand and a ridiculous foam finger, the epitome of past carefree days. The caption read, "Ghost of Budgets Past." While below, there was jubilation, laughter, and a proliferation of hashtags. Upstairs, behind the executive suite doors, a very different life was unfolding. An emergency board meeting. 8 figures in severe black suits, as if cast from a single mold, stood frozen behind the frosted glass. 20 minutes stretched like hours, and then, a new player. Not a vice president, not one of their own. This man exuded confidence and blatant luxury, Ferragamo loafers, an expensive leather briefcase. A lawyer. But not ours. Federal. It was then that it dawned on me, they hadn't just messed with the wrong person. They'd been playing fast and loose with the numbers. Too brazenly. I always said their lies would be their downfall. Everyone lies, but they did it lazily, carelessly. The bonus spreadsheet held more than just payout information. There were dates. And those dates ominously coincided with earnings reports, SEC filings, supplier contract terminations, and mysterious budget reallocations. All this happened 2 weeks before the company stunned everyone with a $37 million loss adjustment that no one could coherently explain. Well, now explanations were being demanded in earnest. And very soon. By Wednesday morning, Gollum, our CFO with his Platinum American Express, had vanished from the office. Rumor had it he was working from home, though everyone knew his bonus in the spreadsheet was tellingly marked as pending wire transfer until trading ban lifted. That phrase nearly caused 3 employees in the compliance department to spill their coffee in horror. But there was more to come. I was contacted. Not officially, not through HR, but through some shady Gmail account. The subject line was a single word, "Let's talk." And in the body, a dry, "We misjudged you. We want to make amends." And an added note, quietly. I ignored the message. Instead, I opened my browser and checked the company's stock, plummeting, down 14.6%. Bloomberg was screaming the headline, "Layoff Leak Exposes Rot and Transparent Tech Firm." And then, precisely at 2:04 p.m., the fire alarm blared. Not a drill, not a test. Real, eye-searing flashing lights, a robotic voice demanding immediate evacuation. I joined the crowd flowing out into the parking lot and watched as our executives, maintaining a semblance of composure, elegantly stepped over puddles in their ridiculously expensive $800 shoes. A whisper ran through the crowd, a board member had collapsed unconscious. Somewhere deep within the office, like rats cornered, lawyers were frantically shredding documents, as if they were owed an eternity. And then I saw her. Ashley, that queen of castles in the air, frozen near her leased SUV. Clutching her phone like a hand grenade, she was spitting curses through her teeth. I approached. She noticed me too late. In her eyes, a flicker of fear, and then they became impenetrable again. The mask of arrogance returned to her face. "This isn't the place," she hissed, like a snake. "Oh, I think it's the perfect place," I retorted. "So many witnesses." Her jaw twitched. "What do you want? Money? Compensation? You proved your point." I smirked. "No, Ashley. You don't get it. It's not about being right. It's about all this. About your malice." "Shut up," she growled, lowering her voice to a threatening whisper. "Do you have any idea what your little stunt has done to my department? Do you have any idea what your spreadsheet did to mine?" I snapped back. In response, only icy silence. Ashley darted into the SUV, slammed the door, and immediately started making a call. No doubt to some overpriced PR firm specializing in crisis management. They'll get paid more than my entire severance package is worth. Meanwhile, on my ghost Slack account, which, to my surprise, was still active, a message arrived from someone in HR. A link. No explanation. Just a link that led me straight into the snake pit called Project Ghost. 50 names, and mine among them, like a sentence: high risk, under surveillance. Preemptive termination? Justified. Everything fell into place, like puzzle pieces forming a grotesque picture. The layoffs weren't about simple cost-cutting. It was a subtle, calibrated operation to remove the unwanted. Getting rid of those who dared to ask wrong questions, dug where they shouldn't, or accidentally brushed against forbidden cells in the corporate spreadsheets. And if I'm on that list, I'm sure I'm not alone in wanting to fight back. The night passed in a fever. It wasn't fear, but some kind of manic excitement that kept me on edge. Imagine you've downed gasoline at a gas station and are watching your former employer crumble before your eyes. It's like having a front row seat to a corporate apocalypse, with popcorn in one hand and a detonator phone in the other. This Project Phantom panel isn't just a list of the doomed. It's a detailed chronicle. Someone had spent months meticulously compiling dossiers on employees marked as problematic. And most of these problematic people were my colleagues, my comrades. Quiet. Good guys. They don't get involved in politics, but they know where the skeletons are buried. Sometimes because they helped dig those damn graves themselves. Some had already left. By their own volition, the dry announcement stated. Except I remembered how one of them, Tanya, the developer, left choking back tears after being told her position was being eliminated due to redundancy, exactly 1 week after she uncovered budget shenanigans in supplier payments. Another, Jerome from purchasing, vanished after daring to ask for clarification on a dodgy invoice that led straight to the CFO's pet project on Turks and Caicos. And I started looking for them. Not through LinkedIn, that's too obvious, like an open book, but through encrypted messengers, Signal, Proton Mail, pseudonyms, even that Reddit thread where we used to unwind, trolling our own company's marketing slogans. By noon the next day, I had 6 former colleagues on a group call. One from Texas, another from Berlin, and one, God bless him, calling from a fishing boat somewhere off the coast of Alaska, trying to shout over the roaring engine. The story they told turned my spreadsheets into child's play. It turned out there was a secret file hidden deep within SharePoint, labeled "For Administrators Only." This document, titled Alignment Forecast for Q3 and Q4, had recently been deleted, but its contents were chilling. It described the upcoming layoffs planned for the end of the year with frightening accuracy. Entire departments were branded as non-strategic, and their budgets had already been reallocated long before the official announcement. This wasn't a spontaneous decision under pressure, no. It was a cold-blooded plan, devised in advance. And who signed off on this cynical reallocation of funds? The CFO, with signatures from Ashley and someone named RM. This damn RM haunted us, like a sinister shadow lurking behind the scenes. He popped up in every document, every leak, but no one could figure out who he was. We scoured organizational charts, internal correspondence, contractor databases, all in vain. And just when hope was almost lost, the guy from Alaska, Timmy, suddenly went silent, as if struck by a sudden revelation. Then he whispered, "Wait. RM? Are you talking about Roland Myers? Roland, motherfucking, Myers, the former board member who resigned in disgrace 6 years ago because of a stock manipulation scandal and an offshore investment company? A quiet disappearance, covered by a veil of silence. Like dirt, swept under a pristine white rug. Everyone thought he was done for. But no. He was still on the payroll, thanks to a loophole for consultants designed to ensure business continuity. This clause, lost in the dusty annals of a board resolution that no one had bothered to review since 2019, made the puppet master behind our bloodbath invisible. That night, with trembling hands, I sent an anonymous tip to a financial journalist I trusted implicitly. We had crossed paths briefly when she tore apart a tech company that had fabricated user numbers before a Series C funding round. The response came back in 5 minutes, short and deafening. If even a word is true, this isn't just bonuses. It's a felony. I dumped everything on her. Screenshots of Project Phantom, spreadsheets, fake supplier invoices, visitor logs. I didn't need the money. I craved only one thing, scorched earth. At dawn, the headline broke, Silent Purge. How one employee uncovered a multi-million-dollar corporate conspiracy. The article exploded across the internet in just 4 hours. While the leadership frantically scrambled, trying to quell the flames with press releases and hypocritical internal circulars full of rote phrases like "we hear you" and "we value transparency," a message arrived on my phone from an unknown number: "We know what you've done. Stop, or we'll stop you." In that moment, I realized, this wasn't about dry numbers anymore. A real war had begun. I ignored the threat. Instead, I forwarded it to the journalist, to our group of former employees, and finally, to a person I hadn't spoken to in 7 years, Max Stigler. Max used to head the compliance department back when the company still had a shred of conscience left. He slammed the door after a conflict with the CFO over, you guessed it, a bogus stock option package disguised as employee training reimbursement. Since then, he'd become a recluse. A freelance forensic accountant consulting for whistleblowers, law firms, regulatory agencies. A ghost in an expensive suit. Max responded instantly. "What did they send you?" he blurted out, without even saying hello. His voice was filled with impatient readiness for battle. "Just a love letter," I muttered, trying to stay calm. "A vague threat. Standard procedure. Did you forward it to anyone?" "You, a journalist, and 6 pissed-off ghosts," he replied, a grim satisfaction in his voice. He whistled softly, shaking his head. "They're panicking." "Excellent. Panic makes people do stupid things." "Exactly," I agreed, feeling the tension building inside me. "Now let's push them over the edge." There wasn't a hint of humor in his voice. Max had long ago built a theory around Roland Myers and that damn Cancun note. He was convinced that Roland Myers had never really disappeared. That after that scandal with the board of directors, he was only buried on paper, but in reality, he was kept around, as a gray consultant, a secret advisor, a strategic hitman. All of this was carefully masked by a network of shell LLCs and friendly firewalls. But it got worse. Max found that one of these companies, Tramway International, had left a distinct trail of payments leading directly to a PAC. Not some big fund, but a small, local one, closely tied to a state representative who, just 6 months ago, pushed through a law granting tax breaks for reinvestments in technologies related to workforce reorganization. I felt sick at the realization of the scale of this dirty game. They got tax breaks for throwing us out on the street. Understand the cynicism of this situation. They cut our jobs, showered their favorites with bonuses, and then, smugly patting themselves on the back, called it optimizing inefficiency. And they used the very same purge to extract money from the state. Well, we didn't give up. The team of former employees I had assembled had become something between a support group and a detective agency. Tanya, with a manic gleam in her eyes, pulled old audit reports from the archives. Jerome, poring over supplier logs, discovered 2 companies duplicating invoices for the same services, differing by only 1 digit in the number. good old money laundering scheme. Even Timmy from Alaska, usually quiet and unobtrusive, got involved. By comparing layoff dates with internal meeting records, he confirmed our worst fears: layoffs always preceded major deals by the same hedge fund. Its name, Feldon and Thorne. And you know who's on their advisory board? Roland Myers. The chain was complete. Layoffs of employees with enough information to crash the stock price. A hedge fund, like a predator, pounced on the company, shorting its stock. In the shadow of this chaos, the company, like a stalking beast, quietly bought back its own shares at rock-bottom prices. Executives, with strained smiles, preached about steady progress in recovery. The stock, like a phoenix from the ashes, began to rise. And then everyone, as if on cue, cashed out, repeating the cynical spectacle again and again. Meanwhile, the storm in the press was gathering momentum. Anonymous sources, like ghosts, whispered their revelations, and one of them, as it turned out, was a member of the board of directors. Someone, like a traitor, leaked part of a video recording of a meeting where the CFO, with a crimson face and a torn voice, shouted, "I don't care how it looks. We control everything." But control, like sand through fingers, was slipping away. A wall of protesters grew in front of headquarters, with signs like "Please for help, I am not redundant." And while I was being questioned about Roland, the company's subreddit exploded like a powder keg. Anonymous employees, like apostles of a new faith, began posting quotes from Project Ghost, turning it into a corporate scripture full of bitter irony. That Friday, HR, like a dove of peace, sent an email throughout the company. The subject, like a false note, moving forward with integrity. It began with hypocritical words: "We acknowledge recent challenges and are committed to restoring trust." And then, like a bolt from the blue, boom. A few seconds later, someone, like a madman, hit reply all again. But it wasn't me this time. It was someone else, alien, who had taken up residence inside. They leaked the entire bonus system, detailed and horrifying. All the names, astronomical sums, cynical justifications, and at the very bottom, like a snake, was a hidden tab: "Confirm RM cancellation." My heart froze. There, inside, instructions were etched in icy letters: how to circumvent audits, how to process fraudulent bonus approvals outside of financial periods, and, like the devil's seal, authorization. Act under Roland's guidance. The CEO will not interfere. The CFO is aware. No more guesses, no more hints, just irrefutable proof: we had them. But this time, they knew our names too. The reckoning came the next morning at 6:17 a.m. Simultaneously, as if by a conductor's baton, we were all, me, Tanya, Jerome, Alaska, Timmy, even the journalist, locked out. Our emails vanished as if they never existed. Two-factor authentication apps reset themselves. A message about a device change suddenly appeared in Signal. Whoever was pulling the strings had overturned the chessboard in one fell swoop. Lightning fast, precise, like a surgeon's scalpel. Then came the call from Max. "No greetings, straight to the point, they know you have it. I don't think they'll go through the courts. I'm afraid they'll resort to personal measures." There was undisguised concern in his voice, and I felt a chill run down my spine. And he was right. That same day, Tanya's landlord, after receiving an anonymous message about a security breach, suddenly refused to renew her lease. Jerome's car was flagged in some system as high risk, and debt collectors swarmed his office as if he were a hardened gangster. And Timmy and Alaska found themselves on the TSA no-fly list because of an unpaid library fine from 2006, an absurdity beyond imagination. But the worst blow didn't come through screens, but through my family. At 9:42 p.m., the phone rang. On the display, my sister's name. Her voice trembled like an autumn leaf in the wind. Someone had called her and claimed that I was under federal investigation, suspected of wire fraud. They presented a fake badge number. They asked if I worked with large amounts of sensitive financial information. They implied that she could become an accomplice if she didn't answer a few questions. Now they were playing on fear, trying to freeze us, break our spirits. An age-old tactic: isolate the threat, make loved ones doubt, wait for the victim to break. But they miscalculated. I had already lost my job, income, reputation. I had nothing left to lose. The only thing they had left was time, and I vowed to squeeze every last drop out of it to see this through. I was going all in. I dumped the entire internal archive, every email inbox, every line in Slack, all budget reports with suspicious annotations, meeting minutes, vendor invoices. Emails where they were approving golden parachutes, covering it up with backdated terminations. The complete chain of approvals and authorizations for temporary reductions carried out when the stock was plummeting. I leaked it all to a secure, publicly accessible storage and sent the link to 5 of the largest investigative agencies. No disposable inboxes, no cryptography, just a simple message: if I disappear, publish everything. The next 2 days passed in a blur. News channels howled. The words whistleblower and corporate sabotage buzzed like a disturbed swarm. CNBC latched onto the story again. Merg dubbed it the CFAET files. And somewhere between the garish headlines and explosive hashtags, the SEC finally flinched. Subpoenas flew like a flock of angry birds. One board member, unable to bear it, resigned. 2 others preferred to lie low, taking a leave of absence. And then, finally, the domino effect we had been waiting for so long kicked in. A leak occurred, a photograph, like a thunderclap out of the blue. In the picture, Roland, white as a sheet, was frozen mid-sentence in a meeting room. Before him, a pile of documents, and behind him, like shadows, loomed the jackets of FBI agents. 2 agents, like silent witnesses to the collapse. The photograph spread across the network, going viral in less than 10 minutes. Someone wittily captioned, "Damn this." And at that moment, the empire, which seemed indestructible, began to crumble. Employees went on strike, demanding justice. Class action lawsuits poured in like hail. Members of Congress, smelling blood, spoke on Twitter about the need to reform corporate severance abuse. In this chaos, the company, like a broken record, tried to justify itself with an outdated PR line: "This does not reflect who we are." But it exactly this, and reflected. Always reflected. We just held up a mirror, and the world saw the company's true face, unable to look away. And yet, even as the headlines screamed of downfall, and vultures circled over the ruins, I was left with a sense of incompleteness. Roland had been exposed, but from the CEO, not a sound. The CEO was silent. Not a word. Not during the layoffs, not after. His silence was deafening. The spreadsheet leaked, like poisonous water from a ruptured dam. Roland, once untouchable in his Tribeca penthouse, was escorted out by the police. But even then, he hid behind a wall of impeccable statements, signed off by the corporate PR department. Behind vague promises of an internal investigation. Behind the tarnished gleam of his LinkedIn posts about sustainability and growth. Until the call came. Blocked number. 4:13 a.m. I let it ring twice. Picked up. Silence. Just breathing on the other end. And then his voice, even, subdued, measured, like a man still clinging to the idea that he could buy silence with a tone. "You win," he said. Silence hung in the air. "You win," he repeated. "So what do you want?" I leaned back against the cold kitchen counter, my feet feeling the icy tile. I was wearing the same hoodie I'd been living in since this nightmare began. And I smiled. A smile full of bitterness. "You think this is about winning? I've already lost everything I cared about. My job, my team, my faith in this place. There's nothing left to take." He sighed. Heavy, resigned. "Look, I know mistakes were made. Enough." I cut him off, boiling. "These aren't mistakes, they're conscious decisions. You decided to shield that shadow, that ghost figure. Decided to smear your conscience with bonuses, drown the truth in pizzas and corporate parties. And now you're playing innocent?" A thick silence hung in the receiver. We can make this go away quietly." Aha, there it was. The age-old trick. Control through silence. I barely stopped myself from laughing. But instead, I gave him a gift he'd never understand. No, I said, there will be no more silencing. You're going to shout it from the rooftops. And I hung up. Less than an hour later, the storm broke. The journalist unloaded everything: transcripts, bank transfers, audio recordings. Yes, audio. From closed meetings where these leaders sadistically discussed how they would carve up the dead weight, how to turn layoffs into a cynical show. But it wasn't the media leak that finished them. It was the employees. Thousands. A coordinated exodus. People were quitting in the middle of the day, leaving their laptops right on the tables in the cafeteria. One of the managers, as if driven mad, spray-painted on the glass wall of the lobby, "I'm redundant." Clients were tearing up contracts. Investors were fleeing like from the plague. By Monday, the company's stock had plummeted below $4. On Wednesday, the world shuddered, the CEO resigned, supposedly for the sake of his family. And me? I just disappeared. Vanished into thin air, leaving the stifling city behind. No forwarding addresses, no farewell letters. Just a solitary cabin, lost in the mountains, and a generator, humming a song of bitter triumph. Above the table, like an icon, hangs it, that very spreadsheet. Framed. Not a symbol of revenge, no. Rather, a reminder of how quickly excess turns into rebellion, once you stop playing dead. They craved silence. Well, I gave them a symphony that would shake the heavens. A symphony of retribution.